Okay, let's start with the last session of the conference. We decided that since all your brains will probably be fried by now after all the amazing technical talks, which I think every single one of yours was the best of the conference, that it will be nice to have a more like lively, social, a bit just chatting around. So first, before we start, I want to take the opportunity to thank the organizers for the amazing conference. A round of applause for them. That was a little bit too much applause for them. Also for all the speakers for delivering amazing talks, audience for coming, and venue for hosting us. Just to make it more a Q&A and have everybody participate, you can send your questions. There's no guarantee that there'll be time for all of them, of course, but I'll be watching in my laptop in case any cool ones come out. So just to, also, by the way, there's some technical difficulties. Obviously, in the multimedia conference, some of it, the audio has to have problems. There's only one microphone, so we're gonna have to be like sharing it. Let's start with having the panel introduce itself. So I would like to every single one of you say like who you are and basically how you got involved in GStreamer. What was the first patch? Who accepted it? If they regret it or not, and what are you working on now?
Oh, hello, I'm Vivia. I've been active in GStreamer since 4.5 years ago. My first patch, so it started because I was in a project that was using GStreamer in my company at the time, and I was not familiar with GStreamer, so my first patch was, I was making a QA on GST Discover, and my first patch was, I was doing the QA and I discovered a bug. And so that was my first fix. It was a fairly easy thing, and it was accepted, but not without a rant about the commit message. But yeah, so I'm currently working on broadcast applications for TV stations and such, live mixing and ingest mostly, and we are doing all of that in GStreamer and contributing as much upstream as we can.
Hello, I'm Olivier Crête. I'm at Collabora for the last 10 years. And 10 years ago, I went and had sushi with the company founder. And he said, yeah, you've been working on this IM stuff, which was an ICQ client. And we do IM and Collabora, and we'd like to hire you. And then 2 weeks later, I arrive, and they're like, well, in Montreal, we don't do IM. We do the video calling part. And that's GStreamer, so you're going to have to learn about GStreamer and RTP. And I have no idea what my first patch was, but I'm sure it was something RTP related. Probably payloaders. And I have no idea who reviewed it. And basically, these days, I do generic multimedia stuff as we're a consulting company, so it very much depends on what the client of the week wants.
Thibaut Saunier. I started hacking first on BTV as a Google Sum of Code. And then I obviously had to start working on GStreamer. I don't know what my first patch was. It was around 2009, I think. Probably fixing something for GS and for video editing. And these days I'm working at the open source group in Samsung, and I'm mostly working on GST Validate, the test framework we are writing for GStreamer. And yeah, basically that's it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Stefan. I'm working on GStreamer for a bit more than 10 years now. I started as a hobby. I wanted to write a music composer that I, also as a hobby project, and looked at some options, discovered GStreamer was 0.7, end of 0.7 by that. And I read the documentation that was around, and I found a lot of things that were not documented, and I started to send patches that added GTK comments to things and tried to explain what I kind of discovered. And after some time, I don't know who reviewed them, but apparently people got fed up with me sending all these patches and gave me commit rights, which is actually a very clever way to get commit rights to a open source project. Fix their unit tests or fix their documentation. Yeah, and the good thing is if you fix documentation, you're not going to break anything. So that's also great. And yeah, so I'm still working on the project from time to time. I had a chance for many years to work professionally on GStreamer when I was working for Nokia. Now I work for Google, and they don't really use GStreamer for much. So I don't have much opportunity there, but as a hobby, it's still great.
Hello, my name is Håvard. I got hired by Tandberg in 2007 on the basis of some Sudoku science. That's a long story. And I got put to work on their software client project, and it was decided that we were going to use this thing called GStreamer. So I looked in GitHub. My first patch under my name is adding a break in RTCP buffer in August 2009.
So you broke something?
No. Reviewed by Wintainments. And today I work for Pexip, and we're using GStreamer for everything.
Hi, I'm Jan. I have been asked this question before, so I know the answer. My first commit to GStreamer was a patch to re-enable Firewire capture, re-enable the RAW 1394 library around GStreamer 0.6, November 2002. And it was reviewed and merged by Christian Schaller. Yeah, I got involved because I was a member of our local Linux users group, and we wanted to start recording the talks that our guests were giving at the lug each month. We bought a Firewire camera, and then we wanted a way to get that data and transcode it and put it up on the web for people to watch. And GStreamer let me capture the data pretty well, and then dumped me in a pit of bugs for generating files, because 0.6 is the release of GStreamer that I call the we could play audio files release.
Hello, I'm Matthew. My first commit to GStreamer was around the start of 1.0. Porting GST plugins GL to 1.0. So my first patch was a lot. There's like 100 of them. I think Sebastian actually reviewed that. Yeah. I'm currently still working on that. I started, yeah. Yeah, and have diversed into other things like Vulkan and Zero Copy, etc., etc. What was the other question?
If the reviewer regretted.
Oh, does Sebastian regret reviewing? No regrets. Good, good.
Matthew also has the award of being the youngest GStreamer developer. 4 years ago, he started contributing at 18, was it? Not old enough to drink in the United States after doing GStreamer for a few. So that's a nice warm-up. I'm sure you guys are ready for more tough questions. So the first question would be, if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing, just one thing in GStreamer, what would it be? And it doesn't have to be technical. So I know it's tempting, but it could be social, it could be infrastructure, it could be anything that you desire, because that's what magic wands do. Any volunteers, or should we just do the reverse order of before? Ooh, silence.
Magic wands. Does it have to be in GStreamer? Oh. So my magic wand wish would probably be basically the user, how many people are using it. It's, I mean, a great framework. It's a real pity that a lot of people don't actually know. So the marketing maybe could be better, but yeah.
I don't know what my wish list what would be at the top of the wish list. But a couple of ideas. It would be nice if we didn't work so hard to maintain backwards compatibility and API, because it would be nice to just go full Wild West every now, more often. We had a 10-year hiatus between freezing 0.10 and starting to remove bad API decisions and make 1.0. We're going to do 2.0 sooner than that, but it'd be kind of nice if you just don't have to do things like the backwards compatibility flag that Edward talked about for streams aware stuff. But I don't mind it that much. But I'll put that at the top of my wish list for today.
I think my boring answer would be a lot more tests. But I think the real, if there's one thing that's come up a lot of years, but I actually think it would be so good. Let's just call it the GStreamer book. The idea that you could collect all these tips and tricks, everyone has these little clever ways of doing things in addition to good documentation, examples to get you started. Because it's high entry level, in my opinion, to get really going with GStreamer. And I think GStreamer 1 has done an amazing job in making it a lot more stable for people wanting to get started. Because 0.10, when I get started, it was just, I don't even want to talk about it. But
you were doing new things for 0.10.
Yes.
Which is always the way you go. You do something that people haven't done before, and you get to find all the bugs in that direction. And it's a few years before GStreamer now has encompassed that field successfully.
Absolutely, but the fact, I'd love to see a lot more usage of GStreamer in big companies or small companies everywhere, because that's the way the community grows and patches and everything. And maybe a book would sort of help, lower the entry level. A lot of your questions you can just
I often wonder I often wonder if we just don't hear about a lot of uses of GStreamer as well. Like we get weird patches from the middle of nowhere that you go, that's strange. There's uses we don't hear about. It'd be nice if there was like I use this, or just some way that people would feed back and say, we are using it and we're not having any trouble, so we didn't need to talk to you.
We had an apps page once where we listed all the projects that use GStreamer. That was like, after some time it was like 90% media players. It was a bit boring, but yeah. So great that you mentioned the tests. I want to also add in tools. I just wish that we could spend more time actually working on our products to implement features and core functions than to debug deadlocks and weird things where you say that, it kind of works, but should work faster. Or you see sometimes it dies with this weird assertion, and whenever you try to isolate it, it's gone. And I think, okay, maybe it was a one time, and then you forget about it 3 days later. It happened again, it's there's a bug. And so I wish we can just tools and tests to just make those things not regress and have them fixed, and you can spend your creative energy on just the thing that you actually want to work on.
Yeah, my wish is kind of similar. I would like to have a way to have a smart way to avoid people to write a lot of code just to write a simple plugin, and avoid people to need to do complex looking to write simple logic or complex logic, the logic he wants to implement inside the plugin, inside the elements. That would be nice.
Mine is not so GStreamer specific, but it's a lot of people are in big companies and they use GStreamer, or they might want to use GStreamer, and they're stuck in lots of red tape and corporate politics, and they can contribute to open source without complex paperwork and years of bureaucracy. So if we could just fix big companies, there would be so many more people here, I think.
Well, Thibaut covered me about the amount of boilerplate one has to write when doing GStreamer, which is mostly due to GObject, but whatever. So my next wish is GStreamer has a very nice community, and Hackfests are so very productive, and so are conferences, but we are so physically isolated. So ideally, every weekend or every other weekend, there would be a Hackfest or a conference.
So her wish is we all come live at her place.
Yeah. If only there was some kind of like video conferencing system to make this true, right? I mean, that worked.
They haven't got a payloader for beer yet.
Oh. Well, there is a GStreamer beer pipeline. There was T-shirts. That's a good, diverse answers. So, in a kind of like related question, but very tangential at the same time, the GStreamer core is media agnostic, and somebody mentioned we used to keep a list of all the projects that use GStreamer, and they were mostly multimedia players. So what non-multimedia use case do you want to see using GStreamer? And if you are John, you can't shamelessly plug your own projects, so no lasers in the answers.
I would like to say no lasers in the answer, but inherently there are lasers in the answer, because the coolest project that has used GStreamer in the last few years is the LIGO project doing gravity wave detection and processing the results from their instrumentation using GStreamer. That was cool, but that's their lasers, not my lasers, so the answer is...
But if you could, you would get such lasers, right? Yeah.
I put this on a private network so you wouldn't all interfere with my lasers.
No, I don't have any time to think about what. Yeah. Anyone an idea? You have an idea?
Yes. Yes, what Luis mentioned earlier, or Jan, about beer. So basically, if there was a way to scan food and represent it in data, I would like to use GStreamer so we could remotely buy someone a beer or remotely order pizza or whatever.
So since I couldn't let John shamelessly plug himself, how about what is the area that people are working on right now in GStreamer that's not your own that you're more excited about?
Yeah, I like the VR stuff today, so I don't work on that, but I'm always curious on that. I would probably not spend the money on that stuff because I don't play computer games. If I can play with that stuff for like an hour, just try it out, how good it is, that's just cool. So I was happy when I saw that, and I hope there's some people have time to just like make it good enough that it's included and stable, and you don't need to fiddle around to just configure all the stuff and make it build.
I actually already did spend money on it. I bought the Vive headset now. So I was also, that's very cool.
I'm getting an Oculus Rift for my birthday this year.
Now that there's no Linux support, you get Oculus Rift.
You can just open HDR, right? Bosch, I can do it in Linux, yeah?
It works like since last week.
Yeah.
Just for your birthday. Awesome. Anything else?
Ooh, they got shy. So somebody mentioned being more welcoming to newcomers. The GStreamer book was kind of like related to that. If you look at the Git statistics, you start realizing, I think like last time I did the math, it was like more than 80% of the developers that were active in the last year have been active for more than 3, more than 4, more, like at least half for over 5 years. So what isn't GStreamer doing to get an influx of newcomers?
I think it works too much now. It works too well. People just use it, right? That's what I assume.
I don't know. I've been around too long, I think, to have the perspective of a newcomer and understand that challenge. It's really something that people who want to be more involved have to tell us what's intimidating or what's hard about contributing so we can make it more open. And Matt is the youngest, most recent core contributor.
My introduction to GStreamer was was basically through self-discovery. So for like my experience is that once I knew about GStreamer, I was like interested very much in it. So getting the word out there is a big part.
So we should make our video decoders randomly put watermarks on the output so everybody knows when they're using a GStreamer based system.
Yeah, so the flip side of the coin of 80% of people being active for more than 3 years is that people stay. People don't just come and go, right? I think the biggest obstacle for newcomers is plain C and glib and gobject instead of whatever new framework was invented last week. So I think it's mostly technical reasons that keep newcomers away, and also the difficulty of most bugs to fix it. Not quite something that you can fix without understanding a lot. It has a very steep learning curve. So I think that these are mostly the problems, because there is no problem with the community, because people stay, people don't just come and go, unless they run out of time or something.
It is a really friendly community. People kind of eventually, even though they might not contribute as much as they used to, they still come to the events and like to hang around. So just kind of like to see it visually, how many people here have been playing with GStreamer for 5 years or more? How many people have been doing it for 4 years or more? Whoever raised the hand the first time and then the second one, 3 years? So one last question related with people that have been in the project for a long time is what you thought would have was going to happen in GStreamer that never really panned out or never did happen. Something that looked like it was going to be the future of GStreamer and didn't happen.
If you grab 0.11, fix me 0.11 in the code. There's a lot of them left.
Yeah, that's sad. When we did use GStreamer at Nokia on the multimedia devices, I was like for some time really enthusiastic to see it like, okay, it's now running on mobile devices and on TVs and everything, and there were prototypes for TVs, and then there was like when Nokia collapsed, I was a bit like, okay, now something else is going to take its place, and now it's a lot of Android, but also it's again also a good sign that you see more and more devices use GStreamer again. So it's probably, we're never going to have this kind of like world domination, but probably a much larger kind of installation base than we think or than we know about.
So I think that's all the time we have if we want to have the closing session. So thank you for the panel. I know that none of the questions were prepared, so you kind of leap of faith of knowing that I wouldn't ask anything too tough. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Louis.